So I has a brew. It's currently Halloween night. I've locked the back gate and I've just completely barricaded myself in because I don't want any little shitty kids asking me for sweets or anything like that, because I am a grumpy old man who secretly is 55. So I'm going to start off with the big things that happened this past week, which is basically the Macbook Pro release and the Microsoft bits and pieces that they announced as well. My camera's been a complete bastard for some reason. The SD card keeps doing some really weird things where almost like the buffer fills up and it can't quite record it fast enough or some bullshit. So I've got no idea what the hell's going on with that. I think my camera has been on its way out for the past year, so I might actually have to just say fuck it and get a new one next month. But I'm trying not to because I don't it works sort of fish, and I want to buy a lens instead. So we'll see how it goes. But let's talk about the MacBook Pro, because I think this is something that most people are going to be more interested in than the Microsoft stuff, and then you can turn off because most people will stop watching after pretty much the first couple of seconds. Anyway, Apple announced the new MacBook, which has a touch bar, looks really cool, it's thinner, lighter, faster, compared to the old one. Great. Not going to go through specs because you can look at all that shit up online. If you're really interested in the entire keynote, check it all out on YouTube. NKBDHD does a really good rundown of it. There's actually a lot of YouTubers that do a better rundown of it than I do, so you can go and check those people out. But so let me sort of dive into my opinions around the MacBook Pro if you're actually interested in that shit. So the new MacBook Pro includes a touch control interface and all that kind of funky stuff. It has a bigger touchpad, it has new keys, it's thinner, lighter, better, faster, whatever the hell it was than before. And they're still calling it a MacBook Pro. So the bottom line version they're sort of trying to have it so that it's sort of going to phase out the MacBook Air, because the MacBook Air is kind of older than the hills at the moment. When I first heard the news about it, or before I watched the actual keynote, I came out and said, oh, Apple are not doing anything really professional with their MacBook Pro line, because no professional is going to want to buy that shit because it's just crap. The processor's crap, everything else around it's crap. Then I watched the keynote and I was like, actually, do you know what? Maybe not. Maybe I got it wrong. Maybe professionals do want that kind of whole thing. And then I spoke to some actual real professionals, people that actually would use something like this. Because I work in media and there was a lot of designers in the kind of media space I work out of. And the biggest problem for them was the fact they have to use dongles for everything. And certainly MKBHD said this of the MacBook Pro. The MacBook Pro is great because it has USB-C everywhere. And I love that. Personally, I love the fact that USB-C has been so well adopted by Apple and Mac, because it is going to be the new standard. But it is going to be the new standard. It currently is not the main standard at the moment. So we've got to put up with maybe a year or 2 years worth of having to use dongles for everything on the new MacBook Pro, which is not very Apple. The whole idea of Apple is that things are supposed to be seamless and look nice. So much so that you can't plug an iPhone 7 directly into your new MacBook, which sort of seems a bit pointless. I like USB-C as an idea, and I like, obviously, Thunderbolt 3 via USB-C is a really good idea. In terms of graphics, in terms of being able to output and input basically anything you want, it's fantastic. However, we're still not in the position where everything's on USB-C. You have to plug in keyboards and mice via standard USB. You have to plug in monitors via VGA, HDMI, DVI, everything else. You have to plug in networking if you don't want to use Wi-Fi via Ethernet. Everything you have to use is basically not USB-C. So it seems a bit premature for Apple to turn down that route and not basically do what a lot of manufacturers are doing, like Razer and Dell and HP, which is including a couple of USB-C ports that you can charge it up by and output stuff by, but also include the old school USB 3 and maybe another output if you're lucky. So maybe a HDMI port or something like that, or even a mini display port would have done. But no, they went full hog and went, no, USB-C, we're going to go down that route. And I was speaking to a lot of professionals about this, because basically, they're not going to go out and buy a brand new monitor that has USB-C, and so they'll have to put up with putting dongles in their MacBook Pros. And when you have it on the desk, it looks messy and shit and terrible. Now, there are some good docks out there, but they're kind of a bit hit and miss. Dell do some good docks, which means you just you have one cable, plug it straight in, does power, does networking, does display out, does USB, all that kind of funky stuff. And Apple also did show off a new LG screen, which does all that kind of shit as well. So, which I think is really good. What we need to have in the next year or so is monitors and other peripherals that just support USB-C and nothing else. Or have maybe things like keyboards that have USB-C but also have USB 2 out as well for your mouse. Things like this, where devices are a primary hub for USB-C, but then they also have third-party older legacy stuff for everything else that exists around and about. Because the best one in the world, you're still going to take a good probably I would say 5 years before everyone gets on the USB-C bandwagon, because still everyone's using USB 3 for USB hard drives. Everyone's still using USB 3 for portable pen drives. Everyone's using USB 2.0 for peripherals like mice and keyboards. Everyone's still using HDMI, DVI, not really some VGA so much, for external monitors. We still need to get down the route of everybody converting over to USB-C, and once that happens, it'll be great, because USB-C is fucking fantastic. So there was that. There's that element. They haven't got rid of the headphone jack there, which is kind of funny and interesting. The biggest thing, though, certainly from ignoring the fact that it really isn't a professional... Let's get back to the argument in a minute. It's a lot more expensive than the old machines, with slightly better spec than the old ones, I guess. But it's like an extra $200 on top of what it used to cost for the equivalent MacBook Pro. Now, basically, it's got a new OLED screen, but even the cheapest MacBook Pro is more expensive than the other one. Now, if you're around the world, they will charge you more money again, because that's Apple and that's other markets and import tax and all that other kind of bullshit. And GST is different, VAT and all that other kind of shit in different countries. But it is more expensive across the board, which is kind of like that's... I mean, I guess, the MacBook is still pretty... I think from a price point, it's still on par with most other devices. It's certainly on par with the XPS line. Sort of on par with Razer's line, although Razer's actually cheaper than most of the stuff that Mac is at, or most MacBooks at the moment. The biggest thing for me, though, was that they didn't actually use Kaby Lake. They're still on Skylake processors, which is interesting. So they're all still on the 6th generation Intel stuff. Now, this doesn't matter too much. The actual differences between the two aren't too great. The biggest thing, though, is that you can actually render 4K video on the actual CPU better, and so you have better battery life as a result. So if you were stupid enough to render 4K video or try and push 4K video through an Intel processor, it means you're not using so much battery life. It doesn't really matter too much. I mean, it does also run a lot cooler. The actual thermals run a lot cooler as well. But it's interesting they didn't go with the most recent up-to-date processors, considering everybody else is. Apart from Razer's new Blade is not actually running on the latest generation Kaby Lake shit. Their top-of-the-line 15 inches also run on a shitty AMD 450 graphics chip, which is crap. And it's only 2 gigs of dedicated RAM. Dedicated VRAM, which is fucking terrible. So I did a comparison between the Dell XPS, which in my opinion is the best laptop you can buy for any money, period, ever. I would say at this point it actually overtakes Mac in a lot of areas. Specifically performance. Number one is definitely performance. Looks, perhaps not. Build quality, sort of on a par, I guess. I mean, this is coming from someone that has a XPS 13 and fucking loves it. So I did a comparison between the XPS line and the Razer Blade line and the new MacBook line to kind of see, kind of performance-wise, price-wise, all this kind of stuff, feeding everything into one big thing. What's the best you can get for your money in terms of decent build quality and stuff like that? Because HP still makes shit laptops. The likes of Gigabyte, Asus, all those kind of manufacturers make shit laptops. But the only good ones are the new the Razer Blades, the MacBooks, and the XPS. That's basically the three you should ever go and if you're looking for a laptop and you've got lots of money to throw around. Those are the three you should go and buy. Don't get anything else. I wouldn't even recommend the IBM X1 Carbon at this point. I mean, it's a nice little device, but it's still a bit kind of shit when you can put it up to something like an XPS 13 or 15 inch. So I did a comparison with the new Razer Blade, comparing it to the current new MacBook. Not only does the Razer Blade have so this isn't even their Pro line. Their Pro line's separate. It's got a touchscreen, which is the big thing. It has a GTX 1060 with 6GB worth of VRAM, and it's also $300 cheaper for an equivalent spec. How the hell is that possible? How the hell can Razer create a machine that is a better spec than what you currently can get with a 15-inch MacBook, which is crazy. Like that's ridiculous. So as a professional, you're better off going to get a Razer Blade, which is essentially for gaming, than a MacBook Pro, Pro being professional, to go and do things like graphic design, video editing, video rendering on the fly. All the kinds of things that you would want to do on a MacBook Pro is not professional. Now, I don't mind this too much. This doesn't bother me. It sounds like I'm ranting about it, but it doesn't bother me. I don't care about that. Because for me, if I was going to go out and buy a laptop, I would still consider the MacBook Pro. Because I still think it is a decent laptop. Don't get me wrong, I think the MacBooks are fantastic. I still do. I'm not really a fan of the new keyboard design, but that's kind of by the by. That's probably where we're going to go anyway, so I shan't dwell too much. But Apple are going down the consumer route for basically everything, because their iPhone is designed for consumers. Although Enterprise does use that a lot, and I have that as my Enterprise phone as well. But really, they are going after consumers, and actually, because Mac is now for everybody, it's for students, it's for professors, it's for scientists, it's for programmers, it's developers, programmers, it's for people on the road, it's for creatives, it's for non-creatives, it's for everybody. It's kind of come from being this kind of completely creative sphere, and if you are a graphic designer or you're a video editor or a photographer, you will use a MacBook, nothing else. And coming round to big movie studios like Pixar and Universal, DreamWorks, like some of the huge movie studios that would have previously used Mac went down the Windows route, and they went down the Windows route 5, maybe 7 years ago. And the reason they did that was because Adobe's Creative Suite, ports across everything. So you can still on your Mac line against a Windows line. But most importantly, with something like that, is that from a company standpoint, you can have a balls-to-the-walls amazing PC for cheaper, and in a year's time, if a new graphics card comes out or a new CPU comes out, you just swap it out. There's no having to buy a brand new machine. You can serve it yourself. You can build a kick-ass rig that you do not have to actually buy directly from Apple. And Apple's Mac Pro is like outdated as fuck now. Like why Apple haven't done what most most manufacturers do, which is continually update that shit. Like all you have to do is continually spout out a new processor, a new GPU every time one comes around. Just keep doing that. I don't know why they don't do that. I mean, obviously this new MacBook Pro is a completely new chassis. It's totally different to the old one entirely. But every time they do this, it's like they don't do it fast enough. It's like just every time there's a new thing, upgrade. Because then all you do is you alienate people and think, well, I'm not fucking buying the Mac Pro because it's 2 years old. And already when it came out, it was already underpowered and shit. So they're going to go, oh, well, I might as well just go and get the latest HP workstations, or the new Dell workstations, because they're balls to the walls amazing. They're cheaper. They're serviceable better. The warranty's much better. And I can build it as part of my bigger ecosystem of video rendering in the cloud, or in a big render farm somewhere as well. So it's interesting that whole kind of the Apple MacBook Pro thing has gone the way it has. Which is a shame, because I think a lot of professionals now are going to be alienated, and certainly there was lots of articles from actual real genuine professionals about it saying that they're not going to go down the Mac route probably for a while now, because I mean, Christ, there's so much competition in that specific space, and before there never was. Before Apple was the king of that market, people tried to copy them, they failed miserably. But what Dell is doing, what Razer's doing, is completely ruining what Apple has. Now, Apple has the Apple logo, that's what will sell the product, and it has the fan base to go with it. But it will alienate the professionals that still use it, and they'll just fuck off to Windows. Which is a shame, because it then kind of makes Macs not quite so cool and hip and interesting as they were before, because it just means that average everyday people are using them, not just the cool creative types that are going about. In terms of the Microsoft stuff, like, this was a complete reverse of... So Microsoft are now going to turn around and going, actually, fuck. So Apple are now moving away from professional creators. Let's try and flip that around and try and grab them back, because the iMac is out of date. The iMac hasn't seen an update for fucking ages. The Mac Pro is a bag of shit. Most professional creatives are now moving away from Mac and moving into the world of Windows. So let's help them out a bit. Let's create some devices that are fucking amazing, fucking kick-ass for professional designers, and let them do what they need to do. So they announced, not only did they announce the Creators Update with Windows 10, which gives you some funky 3D shit within Paint, and loads of other kinds of little interesting things which are kind of cool. They also announced brand new Surface Book with upgraded specs, which is fine, and then two new products, which is the Surface Studio and the Surface Dial, which is amazing. So basically, they are pretty much, I mean, they're not clones, but they're similar to what the iMac always was. It's a standalone box. But it's designed as a drawing surface, pretty much. I mean, there's other things you can do with it. You can use it as a standard PC and monitor setup, but really it's designed as a drawing surface. You can draw on it. You can use it to kind of showcase work, all that kind of stuff. And it's super cool, super cool. And the dial allows you to do some funky things with the screen while you're creating and doing some things in digital stuff. Which Apple hasn't done. I still don't know why Apple have still not gone down the touchscreen route. It's not a gimmick. Like before, yes, it was gimmicky. It's gimmicky on a laptop, and I've got it on my XPS, but it feels kind of weird. And I mean, it's handy once in a while when I'm doing demos. It's super handy when I'm doing demos because I can point with my finger and click on something at the same time. In a general desktop environment, it makes no sense. But in this environment, it makes perfect sense. So I don't quite know why Apple hasn't done this before themselves. So I mean, obviously they got the iPad Pro, but it's not really the same as using a fully fledged operating system and other bits and pieces. You can't embed some of the things you want to be able to embed. And it's a pain in the ass to import things from places and from networks and from, everywhere else. So you really do need a dedicated operating system. You can't really run off of a tablet, even though you kind of just want to be able to do that. It would be nice to be able to run it off a tablet, so you can draw on it like you would draw any piece of paper on. But the Studio is fucking amazing. Just silly things like their color gamut, their DCP3, I think it was. The fact that they've got just an amazingly good screen, amazing color accuracy. The fact it's a 3:2 resolution as well is superb. The fact that the idea was for a piece of A4 paper to be on the screen at 100% as real life A4, so you can see exactly what it's going to look like on the page, is superb. And this is like super interesting for Microsoft to be doing this kind of shit, because Apple has come down and gone, you know what, we're not going to fucking bother with creatives and professionals anymore. We're going to create these little shitty thermal throttle bags of shit that aren't really going to do very well for professionals. And, we're going to kind of like compete with that, which is fantastic. And it kind of goes, it kind of goes along with their new CEO, and I like the direction that Microsoft's going in the moment. I really do. I like the fact that everything's in the cloud now. I like the fact the stuff they're doing with their Azure platform. I love the kind of stuff they're doing with Windows for Business and all the kinds of Office 365. The stuff that Microsoft are doing now is fucking amazing. They just need to, as time moves on, listen to people and don't get so big bollocksed about things like gaming. Don't create closed ecosystems, which is what they probably will end up doing. Microsoft also announced game streaming via Beam, which is kind of cool. It gives you not quite zero latency, but next to no latency when you're actually uploading stuff on the fly. Whereas with things like Twitch and with YouTube streaming, you have quite a significant delay before someone asks you a question and then you actually answer it, or you ask a question, then they would ask you, and they would answer, that kind of stuff. So it's kind of more real time, which is kind of what we want. We need that kind of stuff. So that was interesting. I'm going to kind of leave it there. I'm not going to talk very much more about it because people are probably bored. So there was some really cool stuff came out of the FCC last week, I can't quite remember when, which basically allows consumers to have more control over what their internet company has. So the FCC has announced some new broadband consumer privacy rules, which are super cool. Basically meaning that the ISP has to ask you permission to collect data and the kinds of stuff it's been doing just sort of without asking you, without telling you, which is really good. So that should hopefully, I don't know whether this fits into government surveillance or not, but certainly, the likes of the Comcast of the world, the AT&Ts of the world, means they can't collect shit without permission, which is superb. And this is something that should have happened ages ago. It's certainly something that's really exciting for internet freedoms and privacy and just kind of generally just being nicer human beings. Twitter also announced that Vine is shutting down, and also they're going to lay off 350 employees because Twitter is losing money left, right and centre. I think mostly because it's not moving fast enough for a start, and it's alienating a lot of people by trying to police some things and not policing things in the right direction. So some people they'll police really heavily and like completely ban off the platform for harassment, but the other time was that when actual genuine harassment is happening, they don't help anybody. Things are moving forwards, but too slowly for Twitter to actually recover. There was talk of them being bought out. That's not going to happen so far as I can work out, which is a shame because Twitter actually does need buying out because it's fucking losing money every single year. I do love Twitter. I prefer Twitter over every other platform, but if it dies out, I'm not going to lose sleep over it too much. I'm just going to have to find other ways of sort of talking with the people that I follow on Twitter, or maybe just finding a new community through Reddit or, God forbid, Facebook. It's a shame really because Twitter is a great way of finding people that that you otherwise wouldn't know about. You know, all the people that I talk to through Twitter, well, most of the people I talk to through Twitter, I've never met. I don't know them in real life. I talk to them online, and they're fantastic. I mean, this is true of Reddit as well. Reddit's another great kind of platform for that kind of stuff. But Facebook's full of people I fucking hate in real life, and I wish I never knew them. They're full of people I went to school with. They're full of people I went to uni with. They're full of people I used to work with. You know, the kinds of people that really I should probably unfriend, but because they're so insecure, if I unfriended them, they'd be, you know, annoyed. Whereas Twitter, I can kind of pick and choose. You know, if there's a friend that I wouldn't particularly want to view their posts on because they're very, very politically left or right leaning, perhaps, then I wouldn't follow them on Twitter. And because Twitter's a separate kind of platform and totally different to what Facebook's all about, I could kind of get away with that. It would be a shame if Twitter does eventually, you know, close, or it ends up being bought out by somebody who just ruins the platform. But as with everything, things come and go. You know, MSN was the pinnacle of everything back in the day, and it kind of just disappeared. I don't think Twitter's in the kind of same boat as MSN, because MSN was replaced by text messaging, Skype, well, not even Skype, WhatsApp, really, just mobile phones and iMessenger, Facebook Messenger, and other messaging platforms. And the mobile phone really was the key thing that sort of drove it away, because there was never a mobile app for MSN. I think if there was a mobile app and people adopted that quicker, I think it would have gone somewhere, but it didn't, and therefore it's dead. But there's nothing really that's sort of the same as Twitter. There's nothing that you can even compete with what Twitter is. So I don't know, it'll be interesting to see kind of where things go in the next maybe couple of years, because it could quite easily die out in the next couple of years. If a new, better, faster, smarter platform comes along, everyone might just fuck off over to that instead. I think that's pretty much it. I'm hoping my arguments were coherent in the first bit, because I've kind of rushed through it very quickly, and I'm also very, very tired because I've got the Melbourne Cup thing tomorrow, and I've also got to ring my parents, and I've got some tidying up to do. I've got lots of stuff to do tonight. So I'm hoping it wasn't too boring and ridiculous for you. But yes, apart from that, I shall catch you in a later video. Fuck off. Just record normally and sensibly. Why do you have to keep stopping all the time? The buffer on this is fucking terrible. My God. Just work. I just don't want you to be dicking out. What are you doing? Doesn't make any sense. Okay.